Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grow With Us. My name is Evan Barton, and I'm your host who helps create conversations with the innovators and leaders of a growing tech center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The Grow With Us podcast highlights the work of community leaders, tech entrepreneurs, nonprofit professionals, and talent development advocates in Tulsa. Grow With Us is a podcast of In Tulsa. In Tulsa's mission is to connect talented individuals and companies to stimulate economic growth in Tulsa and to create more prosperous communities across the region. Each episode, Grow With Us discusses the growth of opportunities, the growth of communities striving for change, or the tech and innovation that is changing the landscape of Tulsa. On this episode of Grow With Us, I'm speaking with Levi Patrick, the Executive Director of the Tulsa Regional STEM Alliance. We discuss the role of the Tulsa Regional STEM Alliance as an organization in the Tulsa community, STEM interventions from space camp to underwater robotics competitions, and how you can make a difference in a child's math competencies through volunteer and service. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Grow With Us. I am extremely excited to welcome Levi Patrick to the show today. Levi, what's going on?
Everything, it seems, but just glad to be here and be a part of this, Evan.
It's a busy day. It's a busy week. We were literally just talking about having to put our phones down because things are going on in the world that we have to stay in tuned to. Yes. We are plugging in and locking into this episode of Grow With Us. I'm really excited you're here, and thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to be here. Absolutely.
And we've had the opportunity to get to know each other a little bit over the past year. My colleague and your fiance, Tori, has connected us, which Tori is a former guest of Grow With Us. We love Tori. But I'm really excited to expound on our relationship and kind of talk a little bit about the work that you do at Tulsa Regional STEM Alliance. I think we really first got connected and had the opportunity to have a conversation at Tori's birthday party at Mercury Lounge.
Yeah. Good memory. Yeah,
that was a crazy time. It's funny you said good memory. I have another podcast called I Can't Remember Shit. So I'm glad I can remember something within a calendar year.
Nice.
But we had the chance to talk a little bit about work. That day was so interesting. I felt like I met so many people that knew other people in my community too. And that's just SMALSA in general, Mercury in general. You never heard SMALSA?
No.
Oh, baby.
But it's perfect.
SMALSA is real. Tulsa is a small town, even though it's big and all of those things. But this is another example of SMALSA connecting me to another guest on the show, which is exciting.
Yeah.
But I'm excited for you to, familiarize yourself with our audience and tell our audience kind of what the work that you do really does for the community. But let's first start off with your story in whatever way you're comfortable.
Right. Well, my story, so I work at the Tulsa Regional STEM Alliance, and I know we're going to spend a lot of time talking about what we do there. But I think probably the thing that I'd want to let people know is that I'm nearing my 20th year in education. I knew when I was in middle school that I was going to be an educator. My parents both had blue collar jobs, tough jobs that were outside and, just hardworking folks, But I was a little nerdy kid with severe allergies and I knew that I wasn't made to be in an outside job in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
But I had a realization, pretty soon that school was a very safe place for me. It offered a lot of comfort for me. I had just wonderful teachers that really meant the world to me. And so by the time I was in middle school, I was pretty aware that I was going to be a teacher.
Yeah.
By the time I was graduating high school, I was already attending math teacher conferences.
Oh, wow.
So I went to my first math teacher conference as a senior in high school with Miss Elaine Bowman, who's now, or Miss Elaine Weger, but now she's Miss Elaine Bowman. So one of my great math teacher mamas, if you will. And so she took me to my first conference when I was a senior, where they were literally rolling out how to use, the TI calculators, calculators. And
Texas Instruments was sponsoring that math conference.
You got that right. And so that's what I did. I mean, I went to college to be a math teacher. I did my degree. I came out, I was a math teacher. And I loved it. I actually student taught here in Booker T in Tulsa at Booker T, Washington.
Okay. I'm a Hornet. Go Hornets.
Are you a Hornet?
Yeah.
Did I know this? When did you graduate?
2016.
Okay. Well, I student taught there in 2006.
Okay.
A little before. And so, had a great experience in Tulsa, but Tulsa was a lot different place in 2006. And
Absolutely.
I was born and raised in Mustang, Oklahoma. So
okay, you moved from Oklahoma City to this city.
Yeah, through Stillwater, through my undergrad at Stillwater, and then I came over here. So then I was like, I got to get back to Oklahoma City. I went back and taught in Oklahoma City, started working on my master's at OU. And really all along my journey, what I have continued to realize is that as a student, the teachers made a huge difference in my life. As a teacher, instructional coaches made a big difference in my life. And I kind of have always wanted to be in that space that helps other people, whatever my greatest impact can be. And so I became an instructional coach, and I started writing curriculum and working in all sorts of fun areas. And then I went to go teach, and I was teaching at U.S. Grant High School in Oklahoma City, which had been taken over by the state of Oklahoma, essentially. 60% of the staff had been fired because of low test scores.
Wow.
And so as a second-year teacher there, I was the math department chair with a group of 16 folks. And the realization that I had there is that my teachers needed love. The kids needed love. And I realized pretty fast that the system that I was in was one that I wanted to be able to improve.
Yeah. It seems really punitive to let go of the majority of the staff too. I mean,
it's a wildly ineffective, inefficient, and inconsiderate model. So, schools are great schools often because the educators know the families.
Yeah.
And they work in a space that's very much a community-based space.
Absolutely.
When you shut down schools like that and you fire the people who live nearby, you have to basically import new teachers.
Yeah.
So most of us are driving 20, 30 minutes to get to the place, right? Yeah. So we are not from the neighborhood, and you're not going to be as effective in that kind of a context. Well, all that to say, I kind of set my eyes on policy because I knew there were problems there. And not too long after that, I got a job at the State Department of Education.
Awesome.
Spent nearly a decade working at the Department of Education in math education policy, computer science education policy, and then eventually accountability kinds of efforts.
Amazing.
And all that continued to lead me kind of, and maybe this is the big part of the story, is like at every moment I keep seeing the place where I feel like I can do the most good. If it's by being an educator, or by being a coach or a guide or a support system, or by changing the policy. But then by the time I was at the policy level at the state, I started looking around and I started realizing the people who are doing the most good are the ones that are going side by side in the community doing the work.
Yeah.
The ones that are rooting for the teachers but are there doing the work with them. The ones that are rooting for the kids but are there doing the work. And I knew I needed to get closer to the work than I had become.
Yeah. And
set my sights on the opportunity to work in Tulsa in the Tulsa Regional STEM Alliance.
That's awesome. I love that. I think you're bringing up a point that I've kind of tackled in my career, and really my ethos for working is kind of rooted in the same thing of I want to have a big impact. I want to have a big splash and create a legacy. But through the creation of opportunities for people, whether that is truly building something that people can be a part of, or making those connections that can connect someone to an opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's really been why I do the work that I do, and why I've built the things that I've built in my adult career at this point.
Yeah.
But it also comes with that, the phases of that can sometimes be oh, I'm in one class with 20 students every year. If I'm thinking about the impact, it's a huge impact on those 20 kids. But there's some people there's some opportunities to make an impact on 500 kids within a school year. And when you're at that math department level, the curriculum, the numbers start to get bigger, the scale starts to get bigger. And then when you're at the policy level, well, you're talking about every single student that's in a math class across the state. And so I find that really interesting that you kind of have gone through that self-evaluation process of am I making an impact? And I think you were able to answer that question with a yes, but every single time. But is it personally satisfying?
Yeah.
Is also a part of that. Do I enjoy doing it? And I think that community element is something that I personally am finding to be more and more important as we progress as a society. And I feel disconnected from everyone more and more. And so I don't know. I really admire that.
Well, you're right. That's 100% the experience. We have systems that unfortunately make it easy to be disconnected from one another. But when you have kind of stratification of the system, teachers and then administrators and then school boards and then state departments, that distance, it can be hard to overcome. So even though now I'm in an organization and there's still hierarchy, it's a different kind because we really feel like we're creating right next to the folks that we care deeply about. So
absolutely. Well, and I hate to add a personal anecdote that is really your personal anecdote, but you mentioned, and I mentioned this to you or one of the last times I talked to you, but your Facebook post about like your daughter's experience in math. And like, I think that's kind of right in the same vein of this conversation right now of like, a 7-year-old is Ruby 7. Six. Yeah. A 6-year-old is commenting on the like distance between her and actual instruction.
Yes.
Based on her experience with math. And you are a math teacher and very involved in that curriculum development. And to see your own daughter go through that experience is probably like, dang, like, did I do anything? Because obviously you can't, you're not at that level to make, and no one is really, you have to trust the system. Yeah. And we're going to talk a little bit about the system and what the system we're playing in, but I bet that was a really interesting experience for you. And I think you did summarize it really well in your Facebook post.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess for the folks out there, I mean, the gist of it is I got a kiddo in first grade and she's having a great time by and large. But we were doing a little activity with some manipulatives, which if you don't know what that is, I mean, it's just like anything that you hold on to help make sense of the mathematics. We were just playing with coins. Yeah. And she did wonderfully with this little activity. And at the end, she said something to the effect of, I just wish I got to touch things in math class. And I was like, what do you mean? Yeah. And she said that she was doing it all online. She said, it's always on the screen. And that may not be 100% true, Yeah. She's a 6-year-old, but there's a truth in it, that you got to pay attention to. And like kids are tactile. They need opportunities to move things around, to make sense of them. They need to see it, feel it, touch it, the whole thing. Yeah. And and that's what we're trying. That's what I try to do personally, is make sure that all educators are given, insight and perspective and support and resources to teach in the ways that are the most effective for all the kids they serve. And that's a big mess of a problem. Yeah. And it's not any shade to our teacher, right?
No, absolutely.
But teachers are doing what they're given. And so oftentimes, if the materials that they are given is put kids in front of a screen, that's what you're going to get in the classroom.
Yeah. Well, and you're going to obviously, and this has been true for the test of time, like parents that don't like the screen, or parents that are fine with the screen, or parents that like love the screen, or like always give their kid a screen. So you're, in some ways, when you're dealing with education of little kids and their developmental skills, everyone's going to have a different opinion. Sure. And some kids are going to actually be able to learn maybe better on a screen versus like tactile and like manipulatives, like you said. But there's also a lot of data that proves towards like, true skill development in some of those ways, like needs to be very fundamental at that age. Yeah, so interesting tangent. Sorry to bring up your social media.
That's good. Hey, it's all good.
But, in some ways, you're in Tulsa now. I would love to kind of hear and you work at the Tulsa Regional STEM Alliance. Yeah. And so what is your relationship with Tulsa, and kind of how has it changed over time for you? I just so and I'll level set with you, like I've been in Tulsa since 2007. I went to elementary, middle, and high school here. Okay. Booker T. Left for 4 years for my undergrad, but came back, and now I've been in Tulsa since 2020. And my relationship with Tulsa has changed a lot. Yeah. I mean, there's been so much development. Yeah. But I can imagine the same for you. You're raising a child here, all of those things. So,
I have loved Tulsa since coming here, and I'll. It's as you Smolsa.
Yeah.
I love that. It does feel, especially as somebody, most of my adult life's been in Oklahoma City, it feels way smaller than Oklahoma City, and it's a different kind of thing going on. But I really love living in the city, and it feels like people really care about the well-being of our community. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think it's a good place for me and my daughter. I think as somebody who also just cares about the world around me, I've found people who are interested in the same kinds of things. And whenever, I work in education, and even in my free time, I work in education. Yeah. And so like in that space, I've found community here, people who are willing to speak their mind, and, just oriented around, just positive, a hope for our community.
Absolutely.
So I love that. I don't know that I could ever leave Tulsa at this point. It really feels like a place that I've been in my whole life. I only moved here in 21.
Okay.
And it was still very much an entire year after I moved here. There was still limited interaction with kids, which is what I primarily was concerned with due to pandemic restrictions. So it took me a little while to understand the community, you know? But since 22, it has felt just like quickly adapted and feel very much at home here.
Yeah. That's so interesting, that timeline alignment for you and me in some ways. Like 2020 was like, I could have been anywhere, but it would have been in my home and not doing much. 21, I think was pretty similar. I mean, I took it seriously, not necessarily the state or the communities, many other communities, but like I took it pretty seriously in terms of like my social life and things like that. But like the world for me and my Tulsa experience opened up a lot more in 2022. And I reestablished connections and was experiencing community in the same way that I was as a 18-year-old when I was here, but I was 24 at the time. So things just were completely different. And I kind of had to start over in a lot of ways because I'm sure you know this in some ways, but like Booker T kids love to leave Tulsa. Or at least that's my perspective. I obviously can point out some exceptions. Like last night I hung out with 6 friends from high school, but it's 6 out of a class of 320. And a lot of my close friends did move. And so it's an interesting phenomenon in some ways for the highest, one of the greatest schools in the state to have like a huge export rate for their graduates and all that stuff. But my Tulsa relationship has like for real opened up in the past 3 years because I've had the opportunity to experience the community. And I think what you touched on was like the connectivity of the community is something that's really impactful to you because you're making meaningful connections that are both socially fulfilling, but also professionally fulfilling. I mean, like, in our case, like we met through a friend of mine that just so happened to be a romantic partner. And then now it's a professional connection because we're doing a podcast together. So things happen really quickly here.
It's great. It's great. And I'll just give one last little plug. I think the music scene in Tulsa opened up a lot of connections and a greater appreciation for the community than I had anticipated. And so I really kind of missed some of the music scene that I had access to just as entertainment in Oklahoma City. And whenever I kind of found those same places here, that's how I met Tori, my fiance. And that's a part of it is like, this is a good place to live and work and play. It's nice.
I love it. Well, let's get into kind of the meat and potatoes of this conversation. I'm really, really excited to expose our listenership to kind of the work that you do at Tulsa Regional STEM Alliance, and also for you to really give us a highlight reel of all the amazing things that you guys do. So I'll just start off. You are the executive director of Tulsa Regional STEM Alliance. Can you give us kind of an overview of your organization and how you're positioned in the community here?
Sure. So Tulsa Regional STEM Alliance is, first of all, we're a nonprofit organization, and we last year worked with nearly 300 collaborating organizations around the northeast part of Oklahoma. And I take the Tulsa regional part pretty liberally. So I say to people, if you've heard of Tulsa, we'll count you in the region, and it's because we're here rooting for kids and teachers, and I really don't have it in my heart to say no.
Well, we shouldn't have hard lines when it comes to that.
We shouldn't. Yeah. So, we kind of approach it with open arms, and thankfully so too do our supporters. Because we are a nonprofit. So everything that we do has to come through, basically corporate and foundation gifts. So what we do as an organization, as an alliance, is that we cultivate impactful partnerships and learning pathways to inspire and prepare all youth for a STEM-enabled future. There's a lot of meat in every one of those words, like any good mission. But in a way, we operate almost like 3 different nonprofits sandwiched into one. And so one part of it is that we do youth services in science, technology, engineering, and math. We work, I think last year we served nearly 60,000 youth experiences by creating resources and opportunities and events like underwater robotics competition or a space week where they can meet an astronaut and astrophysicist. And, we do too much, in a way, but we do a lot for
I know nonprofit work, and that sounds about right.
Yeah. Like that's the storyline. And there's more in that bucket.
Yeah.
In the second bucket, as almost as another entity, we support educators. And in that space, what it means to us to be an educator is really just being an adult who works with kids. So we also take that as a pretty liberal, open arm space.
Absolutely.
So you don't have to be a classroom teacher to be an educator. You might work at the zoo or an after school program, Urban Coders Guild, all the—
Yeah, you interface with students or with kids.
That's right. Any of those folks. So we count them in that space of educator, and we work with them. We worked with nearly 1,000 educators last year. We give grants, we give out kits, we do curriculum. I mean, we're just trying to reduce every barrier that we can. And then the last one is the one that's like the least visible, probably. It's the work of building up the infrastructure across our community.
Yeah.
For all of the partners who care about what we care about, working with kids and educators. And for all of those partners, we provide grants and training and networking and collaboration, and we're doing collective impact and problem solving work with them, free evaluation services for them. I mean, it's like, every time I think about it, I think
coalition building is easily one of the most time consuming efforts for an organization.
So that's a lot. So those are the three major buckets of what we work on: working with youth, working with educators, and working with our partners.
Awesome. That's an amazing overview. I think, the numbers are staggering in some ways, because 60,000 within the Tulsa region. That's, you're hitting a lot of schools. I know TPS is one of the largest school districts in the state.
It is the current largest school district in the state.
Which is, and I think your numbers might, eclipse that, even because you're outside of TPS as well.
Yeah, so they've got around 34,000 students in TPS. And of course, we don't serve every one of those students.
Absolutely, yeah.
But so we have direct programs. So, maybe 2 or 3 of the schools in Tulsa will have students who attend our Space Week and they'll get to meet an astronaut. Or maybe they'll have, maybe 50 kids come to Sea Perch, our underwater robotics competition. So whatever those numbers are, go into how many kids we reach.
Yeah.
But also, last year, we gave TPS a pretty substantial grant so that lots of kids in the district would have access to eyewear for the eclipse.
Oh, cool.
So they could do all those activities. So nearly every elementary kid in TPS had eyewear for the eclipse, in large part funded through Tulsa Regional STEM Alliance to
That's
Tulsa
awesome.
Public Schools.
That's so fun. I watched the eclipse on top of the Atlas School.
Yeah.
Which was really cool.
I mean, it's amazing. You gotta really stand in awe of those moments. And
absolutely.
it can feel a little disconnected from what you're learning, but that's what inspires kids, is this innate curiosity that makes you want to just stare at an astronomical event.
Mm-hmm. Well, don't stare.
Yeah, well,
not without the eyewear.
With careful, consideration. Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to touch a little bit on the supporting educators piece too, because I think it's a really interesting, line of work in some ways, because it's one of those things that I think that in nonprofit space, we kind of have this professional development budget that, we're able to work in classes or a LinkedIn Learning or whatever in the workday. For a teacher or an educator, I feel like that stuff isn't necessarily, ingrained in the 9 to 5 for them. It's fully additional to their capacity,
often.
And comes at their own cost.
Yeah.
So that's to say, one, I'm really grateful for my benefits, but 2, I wonder I guess I just find it really interesting that, these organizations that these educators work at, like the zoo, they probably do have they have education for their staff that is in terms of rules of regulations and how to do things. But you guys are really wrapping around that service to fully enrich the experience of someone that works in that. And then also not just the zoo employee, but also the paraprofessional that's in the school.
Yeah.
That might be working with students in a math class that are in remedial math. I mean, remedial math starts at some point in middle school. And I don't know, I just find it interesting that there's the specialized skills that educators need that I know they're not getting at the state level, funded by the state, or as a part of their benefits package or whatever for their role. So it's really important work that you're doing, and
Thanks.
I love that.
I mean, I'll point out the state has dramatically increased requirements for teacher PD. So, think if anybody who's worked in any kind of a place has had to do like the cybersecurity, anti-phishing
Absolutely.
thing, and just like stack up every, annual training experience that you have to have in kind of the regular corporate job. That number of experiences for teachers is dramatic. I mean, they're having to learn CPR and bloodborne pathogens and all this kind of stuff. And if you take all of that, the state put a limit. And so there's almost no time to teach teachers about being great teachers because you're spending all your time learning how to not get fished. And I mean, not that the stuff doesn't matter, but I mean, it's like an imbalance. Right?
Absolutely.
And so what we do is a lot of our training is happening on Saturdays and in the summers. And at those events, we raise money so that we can pay teachers for that time. So if you're coming to one of our trainings, we're actually going to pay you because most employees, when you go to PD, you're getting paid on the job for that training. Most teachers don't.
No.
So we try to build that model. So if you're going to come to one of our trainings, and we'll give you 40 hours of training, we're going to pay you for 40 hours.
That's amazing. And I'm really grateful that your organization is really thinking about the wraparound service, not only for the students enrichment, but also like making it worth it time-wise as an investment for those professionals. So I have 3 out of 4 parents that have been in education at some point in their life. My mom is a college and career readiness specialist, essentially. Cool. She's had many different titles, but primarily she's worked as a senior class counselor into her role at Tulsa Tech, which is a mix of adult learners as well as high school students at Tulsa Technology Center. My dad was a administrator in high schools at Westville, Muskogee, and has kind of been in that space. And then my stepmom worked as a speech therapist, speech pathologist for the school systems when she was starting out. And so I've always been approximated around education as an industry. When I first interned, after like in college, I worked at the College Board and in New York City and had the opportunity to kind of work at like a national, international, reaching organization. And I found that we kind of, the buckets that you're mentioning, the Tulsa Regional STEM Alliance is kind of similar to what we were thinking about when I was at the Access to Opportunity department at the College Board, which is also like far reaching in every state, but also curriculum based and rigid in some ways.
So College Board, just for folks, it includes AP.
Yes.
Advanced placement.
AP was the biggest one, as well as the SAT and PSAT, which, are standardized tests that I know you are familiar with. And, one of those things that I think has really become a contentious educational institution, if you will, their merit or lack thereof. But I think your programming in some ways isn't necessarily aimed at, teaching to a test or whatever, but it's actually the tactile skills about like why those tests, like they're a test for understanding, but not a test for comprehension. I think that the work that you all do is more focused on comprehension. And so I'd like to kind of get into that specifically. You have a program really focused on a math mentor. Yeah. And I'd love for you to kind of talk a little bit about what that program is. And also like, how do you think that can prepare a student for the future by connecting them with a mentor in that space?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I didn't realize that you had worked at College Board. That's wild. and it is a big system and entity. And I think, one of the things about what it means to be good at math is that it's pretty confusing, actually. Yeah. And not that assessments are kind of inherently bad, but they can teach us something about what does it mean to be good at something that's not a complete story.
Absolutely.
So oftentimes being good at math feels like what it means is that you know the answer. And I think that's rarely the case. And I almost have never, I don't even know that I've ever met a professional mathematician who told me that they were good at math facts. Yeah. When what we think about is what does it mean to be good at math in school?
Like they're not reciting theorems.
Yeah. School math is different from math. Yeah. And so we have to just like start there and say, and appreciate that. And secondly, our attitudes about math drastically affect our ability to be good at math. So we usually will say, math ability is not genetic. Math inability is not genetic. So you're not going to, because your mom or dad or whatever is not math capable.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're not going to be, but math inability and these fears are something that you can learn from others. And that's the really dangerous part, is that that we kind of pass it on. It can be shared with others. It can be caught in a way. And so too can the positive version of it. So we can actually convince kids that they're good at math and that they are enjoying it first.
Yeah.
So what we do is we take a bunch of kids who have really had, often negative experiences in math for any number of reasons. They think that they're not a math person. They're not testing well in their class. And they're very much, even in third grade, are starting to think like, oh, I'm no good at math, And so what we do is me and my math mentor, we take adults, usually people who are in a STEM profession, but not exclusively, and we put them in a classroom with kids, also usually during the school, but in some other cases before or after school. And we play games with kids. And these are board games, and they're built to recover first and second grade math that should be securely held by the time you're in third grade.
Yeah.
But then also kind of introduce in a playful way and reinforce third grade concepts. And we stack those up in order across the year for 30 minutes a week, all year long. Kids get an opportunity to interact with an adult.
Yeah.
And it's not a math test. It's not a math quiz. You're rolling dice. You're playing cards. You're doing games that are a little bit like Uno. They just happen to have fractions on them, or, some swamp. We're counting money. We're doing all sorts of it's just like, it just doesn't feel like you're in school.
Yeah.
But what we are finding is that attitudes can be dramatically affected by those positive experiences and positive relationships.
Yeah.
The kids decrease their absenteeism by about 15%.
Wow.
By participating in this thing. They just want to show up to school more.
Yeah, they want to be with their math mentor and
Imagine not wanting to go to a place where you're having joy. Like they're having, so now they're part of their day's filled with joy. They want to show up to school on those days.
Yeah.
And our kids, according to our most recent data, our kids that go through our program are about twice as likely to gain proficiency in third grade math than their peers who were relatively in the same position as them who didn't attend our program.
Yeah.
So it's a great experience. We have a lot of fun with it, but it really boils down to those changed attitudes, getting out of the idea that just because you didn't, maybe you don't perform well on a test, but you're not a mistake maker still. There's still room for you to be a sense maker.
Yeah.
And it can happen in these spaces, and struggling through math is a part of math. That's fine.
Oh my gosh. Struggling through math reminds me of how much I struggled in math. But it's crazy.
But that's like struggling through a workout session.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be. It wouldn't be a good class if it was all easy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
I think for me, and then also to the merit of this program, I don't know if at a certain point, I made it through all my math classes and was getting to calculus, and calculus wasn't fun because calculus was not tangible to me. I didn't really understand why anyone needed to know calculus because I wasn't ever going to be in a career path that enabled me to use it. But then I started taking physics in high school, and you actually do need to know a little bit of calculus. And I didn't really love my teacher at the time, but he did kind of inspire me in some ways to potentially pursue an applied mathematics minor because I didn't get that, but I was curious. I was curious in it.
Yeah.
And the reason why was because I was I would rather learn these concepts and actually apply them to something that feels, practical. As opposed to just, I don't know, I felt like in the classroom structure, we were just trying to get the answer or just trying to ace the test. But physics was the first time I felt okay, we're applying a math into a discipline. Math in STEM in some ways is still the M in STEM. You use it in science, technology, and engineering, but the math is still separate. I would rather put the M in all the other letters, if that makes sense.
No, you're nailing it. It's a both and.
Yes.
It's a both and. Okay, so for people who maybe aren't already in the math family, let's say, they're maybe like you felt like you struggled. One way to think about math is to think about maybe just art. Some people like impressionism and some people like realism.
Yeah.
I prefer applied mathematics generally, But I also love certain types of geometric concepts in mathematics that are, honestly, their applications are not that interesting. They're almost more akin to art than something else.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you can kind of appreciate that in the arts family, it's fine if you like realism or impressionism or abstract art. And in math, it's the same. But we have an idea that what it means to be good at math is to be great at and to care about only realism, exacting ideas.
Yeah.
Instead of, these other kinds of things that are floating out there. My metaphor's falling apart, but
no, I'm here.
Yeah, come on. And so I think, we've got to create those opportunities. And my master's was focused on integrated and applied mathematics. And this was before STEM was a thing.
Yeah.
So whenever STEM was first released as an idea, as a concept, do you know what it was called? Have you ever heard this story?
I don't think so. I know of STEAM, but I'm like, I had to have come from STEM.
STEAM was later. So before STEM, the idea of getting kids to like math was to make it applied. And so they had this brilliant idea to call it SMET. So the very first version of STEM was SMET. And a couple years went by and they said, nobody's really it's not catching on. And
they just switched the letters.
And somebody was like, you know what we could do is call it STEM. And then people would be interested. And sure enough. And so I went from being somebody who's very interested in integrated and applied mathematics across all disciplines.
Yeah.
Realistic mathematics education is kind of the bucket. And then we had STEM, which gave us kind of the first way to start thinking about how applied math and like robotics, computer science could overcome the inertia that is usually present when students are just learning math because it's on the test or needed next year, that they actually want to understand how it applies to their life and their context and things that they're interested in.
No, that makes total sense. And I love the idea that like those people with the affinity to pick up and grasp those concepts are able to participate in a student's journey to find that appreciation through this kind of like My Math Mentor program. What do you feel like, from your perspective, the impact on the employees or the mentors themselves has been?
So, I mean, our volunteers love this. So last year we worked with, I'm going to say the number somewhere around 150, but it's roughly that, people who are actually helping be mentors in schools. Overall, we have about 500 volunteers, but our mentors love this work. Yeah. I mean, they show up. It's a really low commitment for them, but a lot of people, kind of see the world of public education and they see a lot of the drama that's out there about it, a lot of the criticism that's about it, the narrative that it's a failing system, and we wonder, well, one, how much of that is true, and two, is there anything that we can do about it? And I think a lot of the folks who participate with us get to see what it's actually like in the school, which can, ebb and flow.
Absolutely.
But like, when's the last time you've been in elementary? It can kind of be cool.
Yeah.
It can kind of be hectic.
It's been a minute for me. I'm not gonna lie.
but like the reality is, you don't go in and say, well, this could be a failing system.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like, these are kids that are being taken care of. They're safe and healthy. They're engaged.
They're getting fed.
They're managed well. I mean, they're getting all sorts of other benefits. So you get to see the reality instead of the headline. And then they get to know that they could be a part of making a real difference. So these kids are just, I mean, they'll, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed to see you and be a part of it. Yeah. And you can go from having kids in your first couple weeks who don't even know how to talk about a fraction, 1/5. They don't even know to put the little TH on the end.
Yeah.
When they should, at that point already know something about fractions. And, a few weeks later, you got kids who are just nailing it. They're just able to talk about 1/5 and 2/10 and, all these equivalent fractions like it's second hat to them.
Yeah.
So it's a great experience. Our volunteers love it. And I think honestly, it's a feedback loop for them, positive in the public education space, but also they're getting support from their employer. And I think that's a feedback loop that they need and want to, is they see that their employer is making space for this investment in their community.
Yeah.
And I think that just gives them, a sense of loyalty back to their company.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. I think I would absolutely benefit from that perspective in a lot of ways. One, because like you're talking about these headlines and the impact that can have on your perspective on a system, that's huge. Like the people that are the biggest critics of a system are oftentimes the people that are the furthest from it. And that I struggled to really empathize with that person because I know that person hasn't put themselves in not in the system, but like even at all in a place where they can make an impact. And, I think it's one of the last episodes I had of this podcast. We talked about the opportunities that volunteering can really like open up your networks, but in a lot of ways it can open up your mind too. And so this is an amazing opportunity to do that, especially for a system that, everyone participates in. You have a compulsive obligation as a parent to send your kids to school and as a kid to go. Yeah. And so that's kind of where a lot of people's like connection to education comes from, is like they're either good or bad experience in it. Well, those, I don't know. It's just interesting to think about, like, what would 9-year-old Evan in math class, or, just in third grade have done if I had met someone like me. Now, I would have met a person that's very who I am and all of those things. It could have, in some ways, like, obviously we were talking about math and we would have stayed within a subject, but also could have opened me up to like what just like people can look like in some ways.
Comfort in your own skin.
Yeah.
I mean, the kids are desperate to see adults who look like them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a huge issue. And even what I think we have to also realize is not only are they desperate for it, but if they've made a decision, like let's say that there's a kid who's decided they want to, I don't want to say be a podcaster, because I think that's actually a little bit more of a visible area, but let's say that they want to be an engineer.
Yeah.
If a child, let's say that a young Black girl decides they want to be an engineer, the clock starts ticking. The research tells us that right around the time that they actually decide what they want to do, there's only about a 2-year window before the opportunity passes, where if they meet or don't meet a person, it will influence their desire to continue down that path.
Interesting.
So they need to be interfacing with folks who look like them. Not every child is meant to blaze that trail and break that glass ceiling.
Yeah.
Some of them can and will, right? But significantly, they need to have trusting relationships. They need to know that it's safe and possible for them. And so, I mean, it's just, you don't have to talk about what it's like to be you, but you spend a little time doing fractions being you, and
Absolutely.
they know what it's like.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's extremely important. Seeing yourself in the space and seeing yourself with the concepts, a huge benefit to both the student and the volunteers participating. Yeah. And another kind of thing I want to touch on in this conversation is that you and I and Tori in some ways like talked about this right before we got on, the concept of like what a STEM intervention is. Yeah. And you've talked a lot about kind of, me and my math mentor being an opportunity for that, space camp, underwater robotics competition. These are what you would call a STEM intervention. What's one of those other STEM interventions, or really the way that you can track this, is like this digital badge program as well. I'd love for you to talk about that concept and kind of how TRSA is really working on implementing that.
So here's the thing, is that we have like a theoretical, with good reason, a theoretical basis for what we think will cause a student to grow up into adulthood and choose to pursue a STEM career. And if they don't choose to pursue a STEM career, to also at least have some kind of baseline competency in STEM, the critical literacies in math and science that allow for them to better understand the world around them and interact in it. That theoretical kind of framework is that kids need to have excellent STEM experiences in their school day, which in the courses that we already kind of know and understand. Yeah. That, whatever the grade levels are through algebras and geometries and calculuses and statistics and things like that. Out of the school system, they need to have a real diversity of experiences too, like these kinds of field trips and things that, spark a passion and like tell you that, school math and math are a little different, and that, being good in the textbook is not the same as being good, with your hands in the dirt.
Absolutely.
And so like we need these expansive opportunities. And then what we also need is that connection to the careers that are available to us. Not because money drives all things, we're not just trying to make little kids that are worried about making money, but we want to help them to understand what's possible in their future. Because if you want to make a difference, it's pretty nice to be paid to do that, admittedly. And so we try to build opportunities for them to have those kinds of professional experiences. And in that space, we have mentoring opportunities where they get to meet adults and professionals, and competition experiences where they get to really like put their ideas to the test, and like pressure cooker moments, but that kind of intensity is great. So we've got this kind of landscape, and we want kids to navigate through that landscape. And the more kind of experiences that they collect along the way, the better. The problem is finding those experiences is really, really occurs by good luck and sheer willpower.
Yeah.
That a person and their family is going to be able to find it. So if middle school Evan maybe went to space week.
My brother went to space camp.
Oh yeah. So you go to space camp. What grade?
I think he's in 5th grade.
So great experience. 5th grade could be a life-changing experience.
Yeah.
But now the family, if they can't find the next thing.
Absolutely. Life after space camp.
Yeah. Life, there's a spark, but you got to fan the flame.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now it's the burden of who to make sure that child has the next part of their learning pathway laid out.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be a career counselor like your mom.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a family member who's just, good at hunting through the advertisements around it.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to build is a model. And I'd say, by the way, I think this summer we'll see the first system-wide version of this where if you're looking for an experience that taps into a certain context or certain type of engineering or whatever, we'll have a collection of badges that you'll be able to find and connect to those opportunities. So
That's
now
awesome.
If you want a middle school thing that builds off of the 5th grade space camp, ideally you'd be able to find that opportunity, sign your child up for it.
That's awesome.
In Tulsa, for the most part, those opportunities are free or at a wildly reduced cost.
Absolutely,
because of our community. So that's what we're building. It's going to do a lot of things though. So families can find the opportunities better. Kids can collect those opportunities better along a pathway. So whenever they're thinking to themselves, I'd like to work at NASA, being an astronaut may be somewhat far-fetched, when we kind of, all of us know a little bit too much about how hard it is to become an astronaut, right?
Absolutely.
But there are tens of thousands of people that work at NASA to make that possible. So there's all sorts of careers around it, and that we can help build up those pathways for kids to do those things, and they can see
amazing.
And the last thing that's going to be cool is that maybe those badges won't exist. So maybe there's no summer camp for your brother to have taken in middle school anyways.
Yeah.
And so in our model, what we'll be able to do now is actually start working with our partners to say, here's a little gap in this pathway. Yeah. Let's fill it up. Let's create an opportunity in that summer space that's going to meet that need. And now we can kind of work with our funders and our schools and our partners and our parents to make sure that there are more and more on-ramps for kids into these pathways.
I love it. I'm going to, in some ways, you're putting the all in alliance.
Boom. That's right.
I was like, you can keep that if you want.
Thanks. Yeah, we'll take it.
But no, I really like that in a lot of ways, because one, it's gap filling. It's, it's making data-driven decisions.
Yeah.
It is, I think investing in not just one student's experience, but all students' experiences from like a landscape view.
Yes. Yeah.
We talked a little bit about what a longitudinal educational journey looks like. And it does look like a student having a STEM outreach program in 3rd grade, whether it's me and my math mentor or something like that, leading into space camp in middle school, which leads into that student maybe joining the robotics team in high school.
Yes.
And then going to college and choosing a STEM major, into graduating with that degree, into getting their first job in engineering. Like, these are the things that our community and a lot of educational professionals and people that are working in workforce development need people on the ground to track all of those different layers, because it matters to getting people into the workforce. Not that, like you said, money is the only reason that makes the world go around or whatever, but it makes sense to want to be valued for those skills that you pick up along the way, but also just your passion and your interest. And that kid chose robotics in high school because of a passion and an interest, and then chose that major because of an interest, but also because it was lucrative in some ways. Mm-hmm. So I really love that. Yeah. The idea of all of those dots connecting, and someone thinking about a student's A, B, C, D all the way through, because when you're in it, I mean, I'm only looking at what's in my present. So
yeah,
I don't know. I find that really interesting.
You found, some of the essence of this. And so I really appreciate kind of those little acknowledgments, because it is a big system, and nonprofits are kind of incentivized. And this isn't not meant as a critique. I think just like an actual description of what it's like to be a nonprofit.
Yeah.
We're kind of incentivized to take claim for whatever great stories happen for the participants that we serve.
Yeah.
So if a kid comes to one of my programs and that kid goes to MIT,
you guys got him there.
You can bet your sweet bippy that kid's going to be on a story that I tell.
Yeah,
right?
he's going to be in our newsletter.
It's going to be, if not for TRSA, this kid wouldn't be at MIT. That's kind of the story. And we're all incentivized to do it because people want to know what our impact is.
Yeah.
We're, as an alliance, I'm working on a way of thinking that helps us to understand that it's actually that as you said, it's a landscape, it's an ecosystem, and that a child who does make it to whatever their dream may be, if it is MIT, that it's a contribution of a multitude of experiences that created a well-rounded child that was inspired and prepared. It can't just be one or the other. That they were really ready for that future. Yeah. And we get to be right in this middle of the space that says, what if we try not to take so much credit for it, but we try to make it clear how we can contribute to it. And I think in that system, one, will lay a better foundation for our community for everybody to know how they can chip in. But two, I think we can help even other STEM ecosystems around the country to understand the power of what it means to be an alliance, to really work together to create a better ecosystem and diversity of experiences for our kids.
Absolutely. I think the frustrating thing, I'm just going to be transparent here. I think the frustrating thing is that it takes philanthropic nonprofits to fill in the gaps that a lot of people, maybe myself included, think is the responsibility of our functioning government. But I don't know, not to get too political, but
no, it's a great point. This is one of the biggest things I think we'll face in the next 5 to 10 years is deciding how much we're willing to pay for education in general, but especially what we would usually call informal education, the things that are happening outside of the structured school day.
Yeah.
That next kind of frontier is one of the biggest ones. And so you've got folks in Tulsa, like the Opportunity Project and folks like the After School Alliance and many other national groups that care about this, who are pretty much saying like, hey, if you really care about workforce development, then you're gonna have to care about the whole child development. And that whole child development doesn't just happen in that little part of the school day where they're sitting in the seats in the classrooms. So there's going to be a reckoning, I think, because we're a little at the very limit of what we can handle with kids who are graduating school and not ready for careers. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's going to be a decision point that says we're going to have to invest more into these other opportunities to make sure kids are having a well-rounded education.
Absolutely. And we're 50th, so we're really off to a good start.
We can only go up from here. And so
absolutely.
That's the good news. Yeah.
We've gotten into so many different topics, and I just to wrap it up and put a little bit of a bow on it for our Tulsa-based listeners. And then obviously we want folks to be inspired by this collective work and ecosystem building and what it kind of takes to really be there every step of the way for a student who might want to be in some sort of STEM career. What are some benefits to our community or ways that the Tulsa community can get involved in the Tulsa Regional STEM Alliance, and what is the impact of getting involved in that?
Oh yeah. Okay. So let me like top down kind of a thing. First of all, if folks who listened and everybody in our community could do just one thing for me, aside from giving Tulsa Regional STEM Alliance all their money, but if they could do one thing for me, it would be to never say that they're not good at math again. Yeah. We have an epidemic with the way that we're talking to kids around mathematics and learning. Being good at something doesn't feel the same in everything. Absolutely. So like, it's okay if you've struggled. It's okay that you don't know the right answers. You can still be a sense maker, even because you made, I tell my daughter, just because you make a mistake, all we can do is learn from it. Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. That's what math is. That's what STEM is. It's a space where we can learn, we can problem solve. So that's one thing. Like, community attitudes could make a dramatic difference.
Absolutely.
Secondly, Tulsa Regional STEM Alliance was able to impact over 50,000 kids directly last year because of our partners and the grants that we fund and all the things. We reach over about 200,000 kids. And so I would want everybody to know you can participate in one way or another. We work with 500 volunteers, and that's just our organization. That's not even our alliance members.
Yeah.
So there's seemingly infinite opportunity to be a part of the system.
Yeah.
You can work with kids. You can find an opportunity to support. That makes a big difference. It saves all of us a lot of money. And honestly is like very encouraging to have people who care, who show up. So volunteer, I mean, so important.
Very, very.
And then maybe my last thing is to go to bat for the people in the system a little bit, because STEM education is workforce development. Let me just start there. Teachers are K-12 teachers are like the absolute baseline, front line for workforce development in that regard. So if we are not taking care of our educators, rooting for them, showing up for them, supporting them, making their jobs just like a little bit easier and more manageable, nothing else will matter.
Yeah.
It won't matter. The job's hard. So like, that's what we do is we want to be good champions that teachers can rely on and they know that we're rooting for them. So folks can volunteer with us to help teachers. They can, well, again, we're a nonprofit, so they can give us money if they want, especially, call the people at their companies that can make those kinds of gifts.
Yeah.
Because we give money to teachers. And so that teacher who's out there who's just floundering, maybe being called names on TV every so often, basically.
Yeah.
That teacher is feeling a little burnt out right now. And if they're thinking, man, if I just had, a couple $100, I could buy this and this and that for my kids and I could really inspire them. We give them those grants or we give them those resources. So if you help us, we're able to help them.
That's awesome.
And I think it's just don't take any excuse to not do something. Or how's the best way to put that? There are paths, financial resources, volunteering resources, or at least just the attitudes. How do we talk about our community and our school system and math and all these things? These are real, actual behaviors that could benefit our community.
Absolutely. No, I love what you said about don't say that you're bad at math because it's so interesting that I found that positive or negative self-talk to be extremely influential to my own self-image, but also being aware that if that self-talk is externalized to a child and they hear you speak about that, I know that you as a parent probably have already seen the effects of that happen. Like your daughter saying the same things that you say and not meaning for her to repeat it. That impact of that is obviously one-to-one, but it could also happen to a stranger if you're, I don't know, in a public setting or whatever. And there's just ways that it can really infiltrate the culture. And so it's important to not be so self-deprecating about some of these things.
Well, honestly, so perfectly put. My daughter last year, maybe it was a little while ago, about last year, I asked her, what's her favorite word? She said, yet. And I love that. Her teachers did a great job helping her to know if she couldn't do something, she said, I can't do this. What the teachers would do is say, just put yet on the end of that. I can't do this yet. And that means that I got work to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we all, if it starts sneaking out of you, I'm not good at math, just say yet.
Yes. Yeah.
Because we need a growth mindset. We know that changes the way that our mind and brain actually works with the plasticity of our brain and the growth mindset. But once we say that we're not good at it, that it's contagious.
Absolutely. I'm in therapy and you start to solidify negative beliefs about yourself. And then that can really take years to undo. So it starts with the little things, but Levi, we did it. We podcasted.
We did it.
I want to.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. I wanted to provide you one last opportunity to kind of plug anything. How can people get connected to either you or Regional STEM Alliance?
Yeah.
All those things.
Folks should go to tulsastem.org. So pretty straightforward. tulsastem.org. We're on social media. Not everywhere you may scroll, but most of the places that you're scrolling, you can find us. You can plug in. Come to an event, volunteer at something. We've got underwater robotics happening in April. That is at minimum something that folks should have an experience with. We've got kids.
I can't even conceptualize that, so I think I've got to go.
It's great. We've got kids here in Tulsa who are going to win our regional competition, and they will go and compete and probably win at nationals.
That's awesome.
Our Tulsa students from Tulsa Public Schools. It's, you just got to see it.
Yeah.
You just got to feel that energy of what it's like for kids to work through things and succeed like that.
Absolutely. I love it. Levi, thank you so much. And thank you to all of our listeners for tuning into this episode. And we will catch you on the next episode of Grow With Us. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Grow With Us. Grow With Us is supported by InTulsa Initiatives. If you're interested in learning more about InTulsa services for job placement and workforce development, please visit talent.intulsa.com. From there, you can join our talent network where you'll get access to our newsletter, and our talent team will make sure we put the right opportunities on your radar. We put the choice to pursue a new career and opportunities in your hands. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify to be notified when more episodes of Grow With Us are released. Let us know what you think about how we're doing by rating and reviewing. It really helps. Grow With Us is edited and engineered by Rant9 Productions and Jesse Ulrich. This has been Grow With Us.